Now, if you want to change that animation, if you remember from previous weeks, we used a utility application where we transitioned from one view to the second view via the view flipping around in a horizontal direction. So if we wanted to do that, then that horizontal flip is in a left-right direction. Okay, so if we look at this left swipe, just get rid of that and simply copy this and paste it. Okay, so now a left swipe will will create a second view. Let's actually call it second view 2. Okay, but this time, because we're opting for a different type of transition, we have to tell Xcode that we want the flip horizontal. Okay, so after we've created our second view, we can then say my second view 2 dot modal transition style equals UI modal transition style flip horizontal. Okay, there's the default one, cover vertical, flip horizontal is the one that we want, semicolon. Now, just to make it complete, we'll go to our second view and we'll reconfigure our swipe gesture to be in the right direction. Yes, so we're swiping to the left to go to our new view. So in our second view, we need to swipe to the right, which will dismiss the view. Okay, so let's give that a run. So this time we're going to swipe to the left and that flips it around, and then we swipe to the right and that flips it back again. Okay, left swipe and right swipe. Okay, so that gives the illusion that we're actually flipping the screen around. So that's a pretty cool way of transitioning between views without using a button. So you might have an application that's got lots of stuff going on the screen, and you don't actually have room to have a button that says transition to the next screen. So you can simply use a swipe gesture. Okay, so that's all we're going to do on gesture recognizers. And gesture recognizers, gestures are a really important part of iOS development. Anyone who uses an iPhone or an iPod or an iPad knows about gestures now. Zooming in, zooming out, tapping, double tapping, that type of thing. So they're very intuitive to use, and so getting used to programming them into your applications will allow you to do some really cool stuff. So I'm going to close this app down and we're going to start a new project. Again, just a single view application, and this one we're going to call it Picker, iPhone automatic reference counting. And you can save it wherever you want to save it. Okay, so let's choose the view and go into split view. Now, pickers, There's two types of pickers. If we look at our object library, you'll see here there's date picker and a picker view. And we're just going to look at the picker view today. So drag one out and place it at the bottom of the screen. Okay. Now what we're going to do in this application is we're going to create the picker and populate it with some text like we have here, and then on selection of a row we will change the text in a label. Okay. So we've got our picker, but we need a label. Center it, and we'll make it bold. Okay. Now, because we're going to be referring to both of these objects, we need outlets for them. So let's create the outlets. Click, Control, click, and drag, and an outlet, and we're going to call this picker label. And from our picker itself, Control, click, and drag, and we're going to say, we're going to call this outlet my picker. Connect that up. Now while we're here in the .h file, there's a couple of things that we have to do. The picker view here needs to know what to put on each row. It needs to know how many rows, and it needs to know how many components. If you've used a date picker before, you'll know that there's 3 parts. Let's just drag out a date picker for the sake of this explanation, and you'll see here that it's actually got 4 wheels that spin around. Okay, and each individual wheel is a different component. Okay, so the picker has rows and it has columns essentially, and the columns are called components. Okay, so we need to tell this picker how many components it has, and in this example here the default is 1, and but we need to tell it how many rows it needs to display and what it's going to display on each of those rows. Okay, and so to do that we have to implement or conform to a protocol, and that's called the UI Picker View Data Source Protocol. Okay, so we're going to do that first, and to do that we simply click after it says UI View Controller and space, and then a open triangle bracket, and then we type UI Picker, and we get some options here, and this second one is the one that we want to choose, UI Picker View Data Source. Okay, so that's the first one that we need to conform to, and this protocol here is all about the data that we're providing the picker, as it says, the source of the data. So there's a couple of methods there that relate to telling the picker how many rows to show and how many components to show. Okay, so that's the first one we need to conform to. The second one is UI Picker View Delegate, so we need to choose that option as well, and then close off those two with a closing triangle bracket. And as we went through last week, a delegate is involved in handling tasks that are associated with the object. Okay, and the principal one that's associated with the picker is detecting which row you have clicked on. Okay, so if we were to choose this second row here, Sunnyvale, based on that selection we would want to do something else. And what we're going to do is simply write in the label the text that is here. Okay, so our delegate methods handle that process for us. So we have to conform to this UI picker view delegate protocol. Now, of course, we have to supply the picker with the, in this case, the text. Okay, so it's a collection of names. And in previous weeks, we've talked about ways of handling collections, and the most common way of handling a collection is through an array. And there's two types of array: the normal array, which is called NS array, and once you've created an NS array, you can't change it. You can't add objects to it or take them away. So the second type of array is called an NS mutable array. So you can add objects to that array and you can take them away. Usually with a picker, once you've told the picker the words that you want in the picker, you don't need to change those. You don't need to add new ones or take them away. So usually we just supply the data in an NS array for a picker. Now, how do we do that? Well, we can't actually see an array on screen. So we can't control, click, drag to create our properties. So with an array, we just have to do that manually. So after the my picker property, we're going to just type out @property strong non-atomic. Now, we're not connecting the array up to an interface element, so we don't need IB outlet. So all we need to do is type NS array space star, and we'll call it picker array. Okay. Now, like these properties, when we go over to the .m file, you'll see that they've been synthesized. Okay. So we need to do the same thing with this. So @synthesize, and then the name of our property, which is the picker array, and semicolon. Okay, so we've got a property for our array called picker array. So the first thing that we have to do, and we can do this in the viewDidLoad method. So after super viewDidLoad, we can actually create the array itself by the alloc init process and then add objects to the array. So it's a property, so we have to do self picker array equals NS array alloc, and if you type init, we get a number of initialization methods. Init in and of itself, okay, but there's another one here called init with objects. Okay, so we initialize the array and then add objects to it straight away. Okay, and that's the one that we're going to use. Now, an array can take a number of different types of objects, so that's why the data type is ID rather than something like NS string or NS number. Okay, but we're going to pass it strings because we want words in our array. So we've seen how to do a string before, a static string. So we're just going to pass it Star Wars characters. So each one needs to be separated by a comma. Okay. Oops. Luke Skywalker, comma. Oops. And then close off the method and a semicolon.